The cafe was almost empty, just the ticking of a clock, soft jazz in the background, and Lena staring into a half-drunk cup of tea. Outside, life moved in fast forward, horns, footsteps, deadlines. But inside her, everything had slowed. She'd been sitting there for over an hour, phone screen dark, job offer email unopened. A simple tap could change everything. New city, new title, new life. But it wasn't just about a job. It never is. It was about leaving behind who she had been for so long. The version of herself that was comfortable, known, safe. Even if that safety felt like a slow suffocation lately. She wasn't afraid of failure. She was afraid of becoming someone else. Of losing the story she'd told herself for years. A single choice. That's all it would take. But when everything feels uncertain, even silence can feel loud. And so she waited, not for the right answer, but for the strength to ask the right question. Lena had always been the responsible one, the one who played by the rules, who followed the checklist, good grades, steady job, stable relationship. Her life had structure, predictability, and a quiet ache she had learned to ignore. But lately, that ache had grown louder. It showed up in the small moments, when she avoided mirrors, when she paused mid-sentence, unsure of what she truly believed, when laughter felt like a memory instead of a reflex. Everyone around her said, "You're doing great," and she smiled back, playing the role perfectly. But deep inside, she felt like an understudy in her own life. The job offer wasn't just a new opportunity, it was a crack in the walls she had built around herself. A chance to stop being who she was expected to be, and maybe, for the first time, become who she was. But that meant risk. That meant letting go of the version of herself she had kept safe, even if it no longer fit. And the hardest choices are the ones that ask us to trade certainty for possibility. It hit her suddenly. Not like thunder, but like silence. Like the moment you realize the sound you've been hearing your whole life was your own longing echoing back at you. Lena stood outside the cafe now, the city humming around her. In her pocket, the job offer waited, patient and still. And for the first time, she saw her life clearly, not as a path, but as a loop. Repetition disguised as routine, comfort hiding fear. She remembered a moment from childhood, standing on a diving board, toes curled at the edge, afraid to jump. Back then, she didn't jump. She climbed down, told herself she didn't want to, but something inside her had stayed behind, still waiting to feel the fall. Now, she realized, this decision wasn't about jobs or titles. It was about choosing herself, trusting the part of her that didn't want safety, but freedom. Her heart pounded, not from fear, from recognition, and she knew. This was it, the moment that divides the life you live from the life that's waiting. If you've ever stood on the edge of a choice that could change everything, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Your next decision could be the one that sets you free. Lena found herself wandering into the small bookstore tucked between a flower shop and an old bakery. She wasn't looking for anything, just moving, trying to outrun her own thoughts. The bell above the door jingled softly. Inside, it smelled of dust, paper, and time. She ran her fingers along the spines, letting them speak before she chose. Then she heard a voice, not loud, not directed at her. An older woman, speaking to the clerk near the register. Sometimes, we wait so long to be sure that we forget how to be brave. Lena froze. She turned toward the voice, but the woman was already leaving, coat wrapped tightly around her, her steps slow and certain. A stranger, gone in seconds. But her words stayed, like a stone dropped in still water. It wasn't advice, it wasn't even meant for her, but somehow it felt like everything she needed to hear. As Lena moved deeper into the bookstore, she found herself in a quiet corner. Dust hung in the air like memory. The light from a small window illuminated a narrow shelf with only 2 books placed apart, as if inviting a choice. She stepped closer. One was old, worn, its cover familiar. The kind of book you've read before, maybe even loved once. Predictable. Safe. The other was new. Unopened. No title on the cover, just a blank dark surface that reflected her own face when she leaned in. She reached for the familiar one first. Her hand fit the spine perfectly. She knew what it offered. No surprises. Then she let her fingers drift toward the blank book. It was cold, unknown, but it made her pause. In that moment, she realized both books were hers to choose. No one would tell her which, no one would judge. And maybe that's why it was so hard. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't making the wrong choice. It's knowing that the choice is completely yours. Lena stood there, fingertips resting on the familiar book's spine, its edges worn smooth by years of readers, by stories already lived. It whispered of safety, of what she knew. But she didn't pull it from the shelf. She just stood still, aware of her breath, of the thud of her heart in her chest. Her other hand hovered inches from the blank book, the unknown. It wasn't dramatic. No music swelled, no spotlight fell, but inside, a subtle shift took place. A realignment, a soft surrender. She released the old book, her fingers letting go, not out of rejection, but recognition. That chapter was already written. That version of her already lived. She picked up the blank one, its cover cool against her skin. No promise, no past, just space. And sometimes space is the only thing you need to begin again. As she turned toward the counter, the weight in her chest began to loosen, not because she knew what would come next, but because she had finally chosen to not stand still anymore. Lena sat on a park bench across from the bookstore, the blank book resting gently in her lap. She hadn't opened it yet. She didn't need to. The weight that had pressed on her for weeks felt lighter now, not gone, but different. No longer suffocating, just present and bearable. She realized she had been waiting for the right moment, the perfect clarity, a sign. But what she got instead was something more subtle, a quiet yes that rose not from certainty, but from honesty. That's the thing about real decisions. They don't always come with fanfare. Sometimes they arrive like a whisper that says, "It's time." And what changed wasn't the world around her, it was the story she was telling herself, about what was possible, about what she deserved, about who she could become. She didn't need to know the ending to start turning the page, because sometimes choosing is not about knowing, it's about trusting. Lena didn't open the book that night. She placed it beside her bed, the blank cover facing up. It didn't feel like a challenge anymore, more like a quiet companion, waiting patiently. Outside, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, unaware that something invisible had shifted inside her. She didn't feel triumphant, she didn't feel certain, but she felt different, like she had finally stepped out of the hallway of hesitation, even if only by one step, and that was enough. Sometimes the biggest change begins with the smallest motion, a release of breath, a soft yes to yourself, a willingness to walk into the unknown. She may not have opened the book, but she had already begun the story. Because one choice, made with honesty, is enough to rewrite the script of a life. What if the next chapter of your life is waiting? And all it needs is for you to stop rereading the last one.